Good evening from the woods of Maine. It is August 27th, 2024, and we left off at this slide right here, this lovely artist's rendition of what the Ediacarian biota might have looked like, you know, around 560 million years ago. And I felt that this was a good place to stop and continue on because we're about to end the Proterozoic and then begin the Paleozoic. And towards the end of the Proterozoic and the Neoproterozoic, a lot of stuff happens as far as life goes. Scholars traditionally, you know, let's just go back, I don't know, just go back 60, 80 years, most geologists that found fossils in rocks pretty much assumed that they had to have been younger than about 540 million years, the Cambrian. Any rocks that did not contain fossils or that were thought to be older were considered Precambrian. And as it turns out, the Precambrian is literally, the majority of time of Earth. So only the last 540 million years, the Paleozoic, contains complex life. So out of pretty much 4 billion years worth of time, we did not see complex life. And it starts to show up around 580 million years or so ago. And what happens is life makes an attempt at becoming macroscopic. In other words, this is the first time for the most part that we've ever been able to see life with, fossils that in rocks with the unaided eye. In other words, everything else is pretty much microscopic, basic single-cell organisms and what have you. However, at the end of the Ediacarian period, or the end of the Neoproterozoic rather, in the Ediacarian, we have these life forms start to show up in the fossil record, and they're basically, they're soft-bodied organisms that, when they're fossilized, you're only really seeing prints. So imagine a jellyfish just gets sort of lays in the mud, and then mud accumulates around it, and then for some reason the mud hardens and jellyfish decays away. But however, the imprint of the jellyfish itself within that mud layer remains, and that's how we see these. These are all soft-bodied organisms. Life had not really come up with solved the riddle of making shells, i.e., using calcium carbonate to create, exterior surfaces, i.e., shells. However, what we do have is we have the organisms that around the eukaryotes, the more complex asexual reproduction cells that actually have nucleuses begin to actually stack on each other, and then they begin to actually start to specialize in certain areas. In other words, you have an attachment to the seafloor here, but yet you have sort of a frond-like design here. So these are two different types of cells. Now, for the most part, all of these cells in this thing are pretty much the same here, and most of them are the same here. There is no digestive tract, no nervous system. As far as we know, no mouth, no anus. But they sort of stick up, and they kind of, go to and fro in the currents and hope to collect food for nutrients. We also have these sort of primitive-looking sponges here. So we think that these may be related to sponges. Most of these they seem to be more related to plant-like organisms. However, right here, Dickinsonia, This actually, just recently, they've published a paper that showed that it actually produced cholesterol. Well, you only get cholesterol if you're an animal. So this may be one of the earliest known animals. Anyways, the Ediacarian biota is fascinating. Some people consider it a failed experiment, meaning that this life form showed up at 580 million years ago and kind of thrived right up to the Cambrian explosion of life. And the Cambrian explosion means is that almost every single phylum that we see now are animal species. At least the primitive form of it was represented in the Cambrian. Things that made shells, things that had bodies, things that had mouths, things that had eyes, things that evolved into us and pretty much everything else that you see today. They were much more mobile. They were predatory. They were filter feeders. They had all the new gifts that we see in modern day animals and plants. And it basically, you know, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to come to the conclusion that maybe the new and upgraded life forms absolutely decimated these. These were not very mobile, and if they did, they may have crawled. There is some evidence that they kind of moved around a little bit in very simple ways, but for the most part, they were pretty much just either, you know, attached to the floor and kind of just waiting for, you know, their opportunistic feeders. The Cambrian, whole different ball game. Everything was upgraded, you know. So, you know, did any of this get passed on? Maybe. We think that there is evidence that these kind of evolved into sponges, maybe even corals. We also think that jellyfish may have come from this period of time. There's certainly seems some things that might be related to them, as these are soft-bodied organisms. So it's hard to tell. We think that some of them had arthropod characteristics, so they may have evolved into the arthropods, because we know that the trilobites show up in the next at 540 so million years ago, and they are the most dominant species of the early Paleozoic. So anyway, I just wanted to bring this to attention. This is a wonderfully fascinating subject, and a lot of work is being done on it. You know, our idea that life began in the Cambrian was, well, we knew microscopic life existed before, in fact, long before, but now we know that there are actually organisms that were alive prior to the Cambrian explosion. And there might be a reason why this happened, and I'm going to go into that in the next slide. So here's the timeline of life, or, you know, sort of mixed in with, you know, sort of things that happen with the atmosphere and what have you in the ocean. So earliest life down here, I'm sorry, this is the earliest water back, you know, 4.4 billion years. Single cell life sort of showed up at about 4 billion. Photosynthesis, stromatolites, that sort of thing. Earliest oxygen starts getting produced from photosynthesis. And then, you know, these are prokaryotes. They are very simple, asexual reproducing cells. They do not have a nucleus. There isn't a lot of mutation. Mutation is very slow in these. So then you go through here, and now all of a sudden you get the eukaryotes, and we are eukaryotes. We have cells that have nucleuses. They have functions within the cell. For the most part, prokaryotes are very simple design. The eukaryote is a major upgrade. We have cells, we have sexual reproduction, we have the mixing of DNA, RNA, genomes, the whole thing. And from that, we start to get into fungus and some early multicellular life, and multicellular life starts to kind of hang around from about 1,500 million years to about, you know, about we'll just say 630 million years. And all of a sudden, you start to see these animals, or not animals, but plants or organisms that start to resemble maybe plants, maybe the earliest animals, and of course we go into the Ediacarian biota. But we have a gigantic glaciation right between the earliest signs of animals and plants. We have a huge, almost 100 million year glaciation called the Cryogenian Ice Age, and from that, right after, we have the Ediacarian biota. So these somehow have got to be related. You know, the Earth freeze over, it should have wiped us all out, and yet we come back with something that is completely new, completely different. So what the actual connection is, I am not entirely sure, but there, you know, maybe it even slowed it down. I don't know. All I know is that what I'm about to tell you next is really shocking, because it's amazing that life made it through what happened, and that is, of course, boom, Snowball Earth. Snowball Earth. This has been an idea kicking around for quite a while. It's very hotly debated. Some people are the idea that it only made it to, certain latitudes and the ocean was slushy and didn't completely freeze over. Others think that that it didn't really, freeze up that much at all. There are very few, I might add, that believe that. And then there are others think that it froze, pretty much. There was ice at the equators and the Earth hit a tipping point and it froze right up. And there's a lot of evidence to back up the idea that, hey, that probably did happen, because there is just no way, when you find glacial deposits at the equator, and you find it in numerous continents that were, on that location at the time, if you have snow at the equator, I mean, it'd be pretty weird to not have it everywhere else. So one of our lines of evidence is glacial deposits, tillites, found at the equator. And the Namibia in Africa is one place where you see them. Gondwana, we know, was sort of, down over the pole, and that's mostly Africa, South America, Antarctica, Australia. But, the northern parts of Gondwana, i.e. Avalonia, Ganderia, Laurentia, we find tillites and, associated there too, and those were on the equator. So a tillite, if you're wondering, is just we have it all over Maine. It's a real pain in the ass too when you're trying to drill through it. It can cause all sorts of problems. Just imagine taking everything you can possibly find in a dirt pile, a boulder, a small boulder, a pebble, sand, silt, mud, you name it, and rounded rocks, jagged rocks, whatever. And then you just dump it somewhere, and the ice retreats, and then the water flows over it as the ice melts, and then the calcium carbonate gets excreted out, helps what we may call a hard pan, and you get a mixture of rock. I get this horizon, like this hard pan, that has random boulders in it, sometimes giant, the size of houses, all sorts of different layers, very difficult to log, can clog up your augers, you can just cause a whole plethora of problems. And anyways, they are found worldwide glacial deposits at the equator, around 700 million years ago. Right smack, right in the middle of this ice age, there seems to be a worldwide layer of these tillites, and then right on top of it, you go into a calcium carbonate cap. So you went from glacial to warm, and it happened very quickly, and not a whole lot of time in between it. How does that happen? Why is there not no in between? Well, what happened is when Snowball Earth decided that it was time to thaw, it must have happened very quickly. And probably torrentially, I might add. And I'm going to go into actually how that happens, but the gist of it is that, the Earth, when it was in this state, we were having the breakup of Rodinia, a supercontinent, which means there was massive amounts of volcanism erupting beneath this ice. And as it did erupt beneath this ice, it began to melt it. It began to start punching through. It began to release CO2. And as you build up CO2, the climate begins to warm. And as the climate begins to warm, you begin to get rains. Rains begin to melt the ice, and also all the dust from the volcanism. When you put dust on snow, it melts it like literally 10 times as fast. And if you start getting dirty snow and you get increased sun, you're just going to start getting massive melting, and then eventually it's going to just start tipping to the point where everything begins to melt, and it does. One question I get asked a lot is what caused this? Well, a couple of things. 717 million years ago, I'm trying to see where Laurentia, I think Laurentia is right here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that looks like Laurentia. So this would be so somewhere up in here, there was, assuming this is Laurentia, there is a huge lip that develops called the Franklin Lip. And it's a large igneous province, and it's probably pushed away Siberia at some point. But anyways, it helped separate the northern eastern, it actually looks like the northeastern part of Laurentia around this time, and it was massive. And so when you have a lip like that, you're going to get a lot of sulfur dioxide in the air initially, and sulfur dioxide has a tendency to really have a drastic cooling effect on the planet. And so that definitely helped start it. It even might have been the tipping point. There could have been things going on prior to that. You know, we do have some land over the poles, so that helps freeze things up. You know, ocean circulation might have had something to do with it. You know, if you have something over the pole, and also we had a lot of land at the equator, and it could have disrupted the flow of mixing of warm and cold waters. And if that's the case, the cold water will really start to freeze quickly. And then, like I said, once you hit the tipping point, and the ice gets past 30 degrees or so latitudes, then it just goes all the way. And that's sort of the idea of how that happened. So anyway, snowball Earth cycle. You have carbon drawdown and ice build up at the poles. So what this basically means is that you know, we start to get carbon getting taken out of the air, especially when we had Rodinia come together. Rodinia was a massive supercontinent. It had a lot of it had a nice fat mountain range on the equator. When you have that, you have massive amounts of erosion, and you start getting you get a reduction in carbon dioxide, and then the Earth starts to cool. And then, of course, we know also that there was some massive eruptions, and the Franklin Lip kind of over here. And again, this is on the equator, and it probably for some period of time initially cooled the climate as well. So you've got massive erosion taking CO2 out. You have a massive large igneous province to help cool down. You also have rifting of other areas of Rodinia, so lots of volcanism. And if you have ice already starting to accelerate, and the volcanism, and you have low CO2 in the air, and then the volcanism gets that quick shot and such a massive hit that it blocks sunlight for a bit. It reduces the actual amount of sunlight getting to the surface, i.e. sulfur dioxide. You can start to tip the Earth and have the poles start to freeze, and they will start making their way north and towards the equator. So once they get to about 33 degrees, they're going to start really filling up the continents, and they're going to start pushing past 33 degrees, and we call this the tipping point, at which point the Earth goes into a runaway freeze, because now the albedos are being reflected back. The continents are also icing up, so a lot of that is getting reflected back, and then everything starts to really freeze up. Oceans, continents. I don't really agree with this here. I would have really gone continents freezing before all of ocean, but whatever, I didn't make the thing. This is just indicating that you're in a runaway freeze. You're freezing. Everything's freezing up. And then, once you've frozen, the Earth is still a very hot place. There's a lot of volcanism going on, and no matter what, it's going to get out. And as time goes on, the CO2 is starting to build up. The volcanoes are starting to really hammer the basements of the continents and on the basements of the ice sheets, and eventually you start to get a buildup of carbon dioxide. Now, mind you, there's not much rain going on, so you're not scrubbing it out of the air. So it's really, carbon dioxide is just in a free fall, or not in a free fall, it's in a free rise, and it's going to start building up. And then once you've gotten to a certain point, you're going to start to initiate melting. And once melting starts, and it starts accelerating, and the snow gets dirty, and the volcanic eruptions keep going, and all of a sudden everything's melting. You're getting much more sun because the surface of the Earth is now getting darker. It's absorbing more light. You go into a runaway greenhouse effect, and you get a worldwide open ocean with no caps, and you get tons and tons and tons of rain, and you get this calcium carbonate that on top of the glacial till that we find all over the Earth at this particular age. And then, of course, the rains will start to scrub the carbon dioxide out again, and you'll start to draw it down, and you'll start to get poles. You'll start to get glaciation on the poles. And so that's snowball Earth. And this right here, this would be a quick one. The snowball Earth that we're talking about lasted like 60 million years. So this is a small glaciation. And believe me, you know, they are big and they're small, and they're all throughout the 60 million year plus one probably had fluctuations between all of these stages right here, with numerous times when it was right here. So we don't know, we just know that it happened. So question is, how did life survive, right? How did it survive? I mean, if you're in a frozen planet, you're not on the surface. Nothing was living there. So what we think is that, you know, if the ice is thin enough and it's clear enough, maybe you got, I mean, we know things can survive through, you know, through sunlight going through ice, so you can do that. There's also hydrothermal vents where things survive. There's a bunch of different ways that they can do it, but it is somewhat shocking that, you know, life did make it through this. And then we come out on the other end with a whole new batch of life. The Ediacarian biota and plants and animals start to get their kickoff. So for that 100 million years of craziness with the Earth freezing up, maybe that was just what we needed. You know, there was a whole universe in the oceans. I mean, they didn't even really need land at this time. Life hadn't even begun to even think about making it to land. So it makes sense if the oceans didn't freeze all the way down, which they did not. Life probably had a nice little gig going on, nice and comfortable away from the freezing, and the hydrothermal vents probably kept the ocean somewhat warm in places, and that's probably how it happened. So plus there was volcanism, you know, rampant. So there were places where things probably in small areas that they may have clasped to life. But in any case, it's amazing that we did survive that, because I'm sure it was not easy. All right, so let's get back on track here. Here we are, the late Precambrian, 550. Maine is right here. We have not begun to exist yet. We have what's left of the erosional remnants of the Grenvillian mountain range down here, South America, Amazonia, Europe's over here. Lots of deformation on the eastern coast. It is the east coast, I guess. You have the mid-continental arc right here, arch rather, and this is the Iapetus Ocean, and it is opening. And this is what we're going to be talking about in the next, for most of this presentation. And one of the reasons when I did part four before, that's hard to say. When I did part four the first time, it was very long, and I just think that I went over too many subjects. And the reality is I did not introduce Snowball Earth in the last lectures, and what I'm about to talk to you about next, I did not bring into the lectures either. So I've decided to make a part 4a and a part 4b because of this. There's been a lot of work being done on accretionary events, i.e. the closing of oceans, island arcs, the building of the continents, etc. And I wanted to go over some new concepts that we are thinking about. One of the things I've always had this problem with is that, and a lot of other people I guess too, is that you have the classic diagram of the Iapetus Ocean closing, and you know, Africa coming over to the east coast, and it always starts with an open ocean and a passive margin on both sides, and then all of a sudden, presto, there is a subduction zone off to the east somewhere that randomly pops up with subduction going to the east underneath the plate subducting east under a plate offshore of where New England is. And well, no one explains why that happens or where it comes from. They just, yep, there it is, and it's accepted, and that ends up, you know, and it does happen because that becomes the Taconic orogeny, the Green Mountains. But where does it come from? Where does it start? Why does it start? These are questions I wanted to figure out because it used to just baffle me. You know, it's like all of a sudden they just, you know, there's like, you know, hey, there's a great book, but then all of a sudden hey, we just introduced this new character and it changes everything. Well, where did he come from? So anyway, we're going to get into that, and I hope this comes across. This is a difficult lecture for me to do because there's a lot of moving parts, but we're going to make an attempt at it. So here I go. All right, so Neoproterozoic, 560 million years, Iapetus Ocean, east coast of North America facing, well, east coast of Laurentia, supposed to say it that way, facing essentially straight down. You got stuff over the poles right here. You got Amazonia, some Africa action, Antarctica probably over here in Australia, Europe right here, Siberia right here. And what's going to happen is that very soon this ocean is going to start to close. And this pieces of this area here are going to get accreted on and make New England and a little bit of Europe. And I'm going to go through those steps in through this rest of this lecture. All right, so the North American East Coast becomes a passive margin around 550, maybe probably more like 600, maybe a little more. We have the Grenville orogeny. Amazonia goes her way, Laurentia goes her way. We have the stretching of the stretching of the crust. We have the erosion of the mountains, the Grenville orogeny, and we have rifting right here, and this is going to become the Iapetus Ocean. Here is the Iapetus Ocean right here. Here is this, you know, there it is, that island arc, boom, just shows up right there. This is going to be the Taconic Mountains. But in the meantime, this is very far away. It's now nowhere near us. So this right here is a beautiful passive margin with crystal clear blue water, tons of carbonate reef, just like you'd see in the Bahamas, or any just gigantic, maybe the Great Barrier Reef, you know, any one of those will do. But in any case, this is wonderful for life to really start getting its act going, because there's not a lot of volcanism. Things aren't getting snuffed out. There aren't tsunamis. It's just paradise, as nice as you could ever want it. And this is where life really gets its kick. And we get the Ediacarian biota, and then we go into the Cambrian explosion, and then we've never looked back. Life just absolutely just takes off after that. So this is where we are, and this is where we're going. This is going to get dragged over here again. Yep, there it is. Subduction somewhere out in the middle of the Iapetus starts happening, and we have an island arc. So we have ocean crust under ocean crust. We have a juvenile arc of intermediate lavas and magma and stuff like that. And it's going to get generated, and it's going to get pulled this way, and it's going to get slammed onto the area that is now the Adirondacks and Quebec, Montreal area, up into Quebec City, and then into Newfoundland, and that's what this is going to be. So onward. On the Wilson cycle, we have gone through. We've done our rifting. This is the opening of the Iapetus, and now we are here. We are at the Iapetus Ocean at its peak, and we're going to start to close it soon. And again, there's that rift zone. So this is just saying that something over here decided to snap and subduct. And the idea is that the outside of the plates, the oldest part of the plates get dense, heavy. They have sediment, and then they begin to warp down and snap. And then you get something like this, where one side goes under and sucks the whole thing over. Well, interestingly enough, we don't see that anywhere today. So maybe that's not how it happens. Or if it does happen, maybe it's just not the only way it happens. That might be a better thing. So in any case, we're moving over to here. We have a subduction zone. This would be New York or Quebec or Montreal or whatever is on the other side of the St. Lawrence River. And this would be, something on its way over, and the ocean basin is closing, and we're drawing down oceanic crust. We're getting melt, and we're producing a island arc, or if this is another continent, this would be a continental arc. And this is sort of what North America's east coast looked like if you were hanging out near the Hudson Bay. I'm sorry, the Hudson River, this is probably what you would see. You'd see the Adirondacks here forming into a nice warm shallow sea, lots of carbonates, lots of reef deposits starting to form, and this all happens in the early Cambrian. And all of these carbonates will end up becoming marbles, and that's what, if you go out to, eastern New York, western Connecticut, Mass, Vermont, there's tons of marble out there, tons of it, beautiful, beautiful marble. And those are all old reefs from the Cambrian. All right, kind of what Earth might have looked like around 600 million years ago. You've got your stromatolites, warm, this is East Coast, you got nice warm water here, you've got some volcanic activity out here associated with a rifting event maybe. And this is not a bad artist rendition. Minus the trees here, this is what you might see about 560 million years. This margin here, this is all calmed down, the volcanism has stopped, and now we have just real nice rolling mountains with beautiful, beautiful pristine water, which carbonates just love, and they start to build the marbles that will eventually be found in New York, Vermont, Mass, and Connecticut. We went through this picture. This is the Ediacarian life that kind of formed at that time, and just beautiful blue water and all sorts of primitive life forms here. The Dickinsonia, the maybe coral, maybe sponge type thing. This is sort of like a frond. I don't know, this looks like a starfruit to me. But all of these are really just very soft-bodied organisms that are essentially made up of a few different kinds of cells that have stacked on one another. They are not true organisms in the sense that we are, because they do not have a front, a back. They kind of have a top and bottom, but they don't really have a digestive tract or a nervous system or eyes or ears or anything other than they just sort of have bodies. Bodies, yes. Another rendition, some of them have bilateral symmetry. Again, Dickinsonia, they got the fronds, we got the starfruits over here, and then these coral sponge things. Just love it. I mean, imagine seeing that. All right, so drum roll please. We are going to close the Iapetus Ocean, and I have gone over these slides and moved them around, and I'm just trying to get the best sequence to make this point go through. So in a nutshell, the closing of the Iapetus Ocean kind of starts about 540 might be I don't know when it exactly starts, but around 540 you're starting, the Iapetus is in its heyday. And what happens is, where does that mysterious island arc that shows up? Because at 480, the island arc right here, which you haven't seen here, which isn't depicted here, it's kind of somewhere over here. Maybe it's over here. But anyways, this right here is what we call perigondwana terrains, and i.e. they are parts of Amazonia, because this is South America right here, and Western Africa. And we call this is sort of Avalonia, Meguma, and Ganderia terrain, listed as A through C right here. So how do you take this piece that's facing 90 degrees, facing almost the opposite side of the globe, and how do you get it wedged on to this area? Because this whole piece right here gets slammed right in here, as you can see. So you can see it here, and then you see it getting dragged over by the subduction zones. You see it getting welded on right here to eastern Laurentia, and then eventually everything closes and you have Pangea, and that piece is right here and it stays there. So how does this happen? Well, what we think happens is you have a strike-slip fault somewhere in the ocean. It could be also related to these transform faults, but somewhere in the ocean offshore, there's a strike-slip fault, which I'm going to show in more detail in a minute. Probably something like this. One of these areas can do it right here. You have a triple junction here. These are not all moving uniform. One can start to slip under the other, and then the whole thing starts. So we could assume maybe there's a triple junction over here somewhere. Subduction, mid-ocean ridge this way, maybe one going this way, or just a different, maybe some of these faults are longer. Anyway, something happens and there's a major strike-slip fault in the ocean basin, And if it gets near, if once, because the Earth is curved, they eventually, and they don't move at the same speeds. Sometimes they can bend, and you get bends in these strike slip faults, and one might decide to go under the other. And because they're pretty much equal density, and if you get some offsets, there's a chance that one might go in the other, and then hence you start subduction. And once subduction starts, it will kind of keep going. So at some point, something on this side here ended up going under this side here. And what happens is this becomes a subduction zone, and everything starts to get pulled this way. And you can see the subduction zone starting to form. This is the transform fault. It gets near the side of Gondwana, one of the eastern sides of it, and it starts to subduct in this direction. Well, it's actually subducting this way, but if it starts here, it's going to start unzipping its way this way and unzipping its way this way. And what happens is it will actually start to subduct under a piece of the continent as well, as the ocean here goes underneath this plate. Everything's going to start getting pulled this way like a tongue. And as it does, the subduction zone will start to go under here and start pulling this piece this way, and this ends up getting snapped off and dragged across the ocean. As you can see here, by 460 million years old, this subduction zone is now in full throttle. It actually, somewhere out here, there is terrains off of Laurentia, the Taconic island arc, and this is represented right here. This is the Taconic island arc right here. So what happened is this snapped. It started subducting and pulling all the crust this way, and as it did, it ripped this off, and it pulled this piece out here. This piece here is now here, and it's going to end up getting accreted onto this side here. And then you can see right here at 370, the subduction zone has continued, and now Avalonia and Ganderia are being welded onto the northern Laurentia, and also Baltica, and then eventually, then behind it, so that here's the Iapetus, and then you have so behind this there's an ocean that forms here called the Rheic. Here is the Rheic Ocean here. Iapetus is now closed. The Rheic is now open, and then eventually this all comes up and slams into North America, creating the final part of the Appalachian orogeny, the Alleghanian orogeny. And this is when Pangea comes together about 280 million years ago. So if you look down here, these are the pieces at 280 million years ago that are touching the east coast. You have Northwest Africa right here. This is sort of the Rheic suture. You have pieces of Avalonia here and here, which is pieces of this right here, or this right here. You have pieces of Avalonia here and here. And then you have other pieces of South America, northern South America, that are somewhere down here and over here. We call it the Carolina Train. And so here's the tip of South America. So this area right here is represented in this area here. Africa right here, South America right here. And these pieces this piece right here came off of the tip of South America and the part of Western Africa. So how does this happen? Let's make it a little more simple. So here is a transform fault right here, a strike slip fault in the middle of the Atlantic that we have today. Big giant one. You can tell that here's the mid-ocean ridge. Well, if this side of the ridge is going this way and this side's going this way, that means that this side's going this way and this side's going this way. But right in here, they are going opposite directions. And if you kink this just a little bit, one is definitely going to start to go under one another. And so far, nothing's happened here. Well, we can't really say the same, though, if you go down here. Here is a gigantic strike slip fault right in here. And this right here is probably rated right here because this is the earliest area where the Atlantic Ocean opened up. And I guarantee you there was a very long strike slip fault in here somewhere, a transform fault. And at some point, and it probably happened way back here during the initial opening of the Atlantic, but for one reason or another, this side here has decided to go under this side here. And what's happened, so you can really pretty much see that the continental part, the shelf of South America is probably something like that. But what's happening is as this is subducting, it's pulling this way, this way, this way, and this way. And you can see that right here. This whole thing was probably over here at one time, and it is since the subduction started over here, it has been pulling this whole thing this way, and you can tell it's been stretching this whole area right here. And you'll see it better on the next slide. So, how does this happen? We're going to go back to this part right here, and that's represented right here. Here's Avalonia. Do this again. Strike slip fault, Avalonia terrain, northwestern part of the northern. Today's northern part is on this map is eastern, but it's the north tip of South America and West Africa. This strike slip fault, one side decides this side here subducts under this side at some point because of somehow it curves. There's an offset. And by the way, this is great because it shows this is the Peri-Laurentian arc. This is going to be, this was probably left over when this separated possibly. In any case, what's going to happen is this is going to get mixed up and become part of the Green Mountains. So you have this strike slip, you have Avalonia, you have Ganderia right here. This makes up the guts of Maine and New Hampshire, by the way. Subduction is going to start here, and as it does, as this side starts to subduct, it's going to pull everything this way. And here you are, you can see the tongue coming out, subduction's going this way, it's pulling these pieces here right off of the tip of Western Africa, and it's dragging all of this way. And you have even another one forming behind it. And as this continues, you're taking pieces of northwestern Africa and you are dragging it along. And by the way, once this gets past Ganderia, it starts pulling pieces of this too. So it hasn't got here yet. It starts pulling this first, then it starts pulling this, and then as it keeps going, you end up having this run into to the island arc offshore of North America, which is the Taconic arc. And so the subduction zone hits the Taconic arc. It starts to drag that over into North America, and eventually you end up getting the Taconic orogeny right here, and you actually have a polarity reversal. So again, Avalonia, Ganderia. Avalonia gets yanked, gets rifted. Avalonia gets rifted and yanked. The Ganderia has not. Now Ganderia gets involved in it. The whole plate right here, remember, is going this way. It continues. Ganderia keeps going over it. You have a new subduction zone possibly forming here. You have a subduction zone forming here. Ganderia is now on its way over. This will become the Rheic Ocean. This is the Iapetus. The subduction zone is now right here. It's getting close to the Peri-Laurentian arc. Here it hits it. It ends up probably into as it hits it. It probably either goes under it or just the arc associated with it collides with it, and then polarity will essentially reverse at some point, or it will just keep going until because North America is right here. Once it hits North America, the subduction goes from going this way. Actually, I'm sorry, the subduction is going this way and pulling this way. So this is going under here and pulling this way. This is going under here, pulling this way. This is going under here and pulling this way. But once you actually hit North America, Laurentia, the subduction keeps going, but it switches, and now it's going underneath Laurentia itself. So here it's going under this way. Now it's going under this way, and we have numerous arcs behind here that are formed. And again, Avalonia is going to get accreted onto here, and then pieces of it down here. And Ganderia, which is right in here, is going to get welded on and accreted onto North America, where New England is eventually. So that's how this happens. So the strike slip fault opens in Ocean Basin, boom, right there. Subduction near continental shelves of Amazonia, North Africa, pulls these fragments of these continents off, creating microcontinents of Ganderia and Avalonia right here. This is getting pulled because there's another strike slip here, strike slip here. Subduction drags microcontinents across Iapetus Ocean, as oceanic crust is being subduction, and eventually rams into Laurentia. So here it is getting these are getting dragged. Now it's getting into Laurentia, and then it slams into it. Subduction collides with Peri-Laurentian arc, the Taconic arc, on the way across the ocean basin, and pulls it along, and only to eventually collide with Laurentia prior to the microcontinents of Ganderia right here and Avalonia. So this is how the whole thing happens in a nutshell. And this is sort of a close-up of it. The transform fault, Ganderia. This is all Maine and New Hampshire. This is coastal Maine. This is Rhode Island and Eastern Mass. And of course, parts of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. And again, this piece here goes under here and then starts, as this gets subducted down, it pulls everything this way. And that's why you see this extension right here. Then, of course, there's another, there's going to be another boundary here, maybe even a back arc basin. But yeah, rifting of the pieces of Amazonia, North Africa to create Ganderia. That's how it happened. This thing starts subducting. As it cruises by, it rips off pieces of these continents and just takes them along for the ride. And if you don't believe me, well, here's a modern day analog. This indicates plate vector movement here by this arrow. So everything here is going this way. This is a very long strike slip fault, transform fault, probably initiated very early. This is what I was talking about when I was looking at this one right here. One of these. This is the one I'm talking about now, and now I'm showing it in much bigger detail. And here it is. So at some point, probably when this whole thing rifted off of here, there was a transform fault. It eventually one side subduct, because this down here did not open till much later. This was the first part of the Atlantic to ocean. So it makes sense that the speed here would be going much different. This was moving much quicker than this right here. So in relation, the whole part of South America was staying this way compared to North America moving at a fast rate this way. Well, at some point along this strike slip fault, it began to subduct, and it is a brand, it almost looks like a new subduction zone, and it's eventually going to continue to subduct, and it's going to work its way around over here. You can see a new trench here. You got back arcs here, and then this whole thing is going to get dragged across the Atlantic Ocean, only to eventually ram into probably somewhere in Western Africa. But this is a modern day thing. This crust here, was originally somewhere over here, and you can see how the whole thing's being pulled this way. And what's interesting is this is actually pulling pieces of this crust right here. We think is probably more related to the Pacific Ocean. So it's actually pulling Pacific crust through it and on its way into the Atlantic. So it's really fascinating how that works. By the way, it's the deepest place in the Atlantic Ocean. So this is sort of where the Atlantic is beginning to start to subduct. And eventually this is going to continue probably and probably make its way along here somewhere, and I don't know where this is going to go. It might go up the chain. It might go right along here, and this whole thing may begin to become a subduction zone, right up into the Gulf of Mexico, maybe. Who knows? If it did, could even screw with this a little bit. I don't know. But this is the beginning of subduction in the Atlantic Ocean. And the Atlantic Ocean, by the way, is a old and very mature ocean, and it may even go for a good another 50 million years and become the widest ocean on the planet. And example B is down by South America. This is a trench right here down between Antarctica and South America. Again, plate vector movement is this way. And you can see there's a mid-ocean ridge right here from where these two guys split apart. There's another one right here. What I can't help but notice is the offset between here and here. Now, my guess is that these may have been a little more connected. Or here's a huge transform fault right here. There's another one. See, this one may even begin to initiate subduction. But I bet these kind of line up. Or maybe it's going to go this way. But in any case, there's a mid-ocean ridge with transform faults right here, and it continues right through here and then down over here. And guess what? One decided to slip under the other. And it probably happened somewhere in here, but there's no doubt in my mind that the shape of these two coastlines is related to the crust going under this piece of crust here going underneath this piece of crust here and dragging, because when it drops you have to fill the void. So it's just like the choo-choo train, it just keeps going this way. I mean, look at the shape of this. You can tell that it's been pulled through here, and it's created this sort of relief right here. This whole thing is just being pulled right through. And it even looks like that, you know, is this an extension of this or is it an extension of this? Hard to tell. But whatever's happening here, there's a new trench starting here of subduction. There's going to be subduction here. And it's all related probably to one of these lines, which you can kind of see it right there. And so a whole new area of subduction starting. And this is just a subduction dragging microcontinents across the Iapetus. A little bit more detail here. Avalonia, Ganderia, the interaction with the Perigondwana terrain, i.e. the Taconic Orogeny, also Scotland, by the way, pieces of Scotland. Other pieces became Vermont. So yeah, getting pulled off and then just pulled. The subduction zone goes pretty much right through the Perigondwana arc, the Taconic, and then it accretes that to, you know, the New York border, the Quebec, Montreal, Newfoundland, Scotland, which was on Laurentia at that time. And then as it continues, you now have a reversal of polarity. So here, the oceanic crust is going under this way, but here it's going under, now it's going under the continent. And we notice a significant change in that. We can tell that by the magmatic activity along the border when this occurred. So between 480 and 440 is when the Taconic arc accreted onto North America, and the volcanism switched from off, you know, basically under the arc to being more inland a little bit, meaning that it was more interacting with the punching up through Laurentia crust as opposed to oceanic crust. So when it was this way, it was punching up through an island arc or oceanic crust, but when subduction ended up going underneath the continent, it started punching up through the edge of the continent. And we know that because the magmas or lavas generated out here are much more mafic than the ones that are generated when they come up through the continental crust, because they get contaminated, and continental crust is obviously more felsic. That's how we know that. All right, the Cambrian period. This is 514 million years. Gondwana is over here. South America here. We have the Iapetus Ocean here. And we have, subductions over here, which was basically pulling Laurentia kind of more or less this way. Baltica and Siberia are separated by a triple junction here. And eventually this is all going to start. This is going to go this way because the subduction here is going to drag these this way, and then everything's going to come through and fill the. It's kind of skewed when you look at a diagram, but this is Laurentia here. We are located here. Siberia, Baltica, which is Europe. This is Russia, Africa, South America, and what you really can't see is probably China's over here. There's Australia, Antarctica here, and maybe India over here. Cambrian period. This is Laurentia during the Cambrian period, about 510 million years ago. This is the island arc right here that will become the Green Mountains. What will happen here is that subduction zone is somewhere offshore here. Actually, it's represented kind of right here now by this time. So the subduction is continuing. You have this right here is being pulled this way, and it's going to slam into this area right here and create numerous terrains. These will be the Green Mountains right here. These will be part of, Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, so forth. Cambrian period 500 million. As you can see, that the arc is getting closer now. The trench this is becoming the Taconic Seaway. This will become a narrow seaway in its own right. And when you look at the Green Mountains, if you drive up through 91 or through Vermont, you're going to see tons and tons of deep water sediments, i.e. Slates and schist, and they're all over central. Actually, they're all over from Connecticut through Western Mass, all the way up through Vermont. I mean, they're just loaded with these deep water trench sediments, which were once deep water muds, which became shales, which became slates, which became phyllites and schists. Believe me, when you drive up 91 or 89, you will see these just layered rocks. They're black, dark, charcoal, and they're very distinctive. And those are deep water trench sediments that were either scraped off as the plate subducted, or they were just crunched and uplifted at a later time. Global view, 485 million years ago. This is the Taconic Islands right here, the Taconic Arc. It is going to slam into North America. Or, I'm sorry, Laurentia, I keep doing that. You have the South Pole with Gondwana down here. You got a gigantic mountain range here, Baltica and Siberia. And this is the start of the Taconic Orogeny. Cambrian tectonic map and paleogeography map. All right, well, we are here, but really we're going to start moving towards this area. So this is going to collide, and then we're going to be here, and then we're going to have some exotic terrains, Ganderia with being one of them. So we would say that this is Ganderia right here, and it's going to follow suit and eventually adhere on behind this. And then we have Avalonia here, and then eventually Africa right here. And if we were to look at what we would see, so there's not a lot of mountain building going on at the moment, but it's about to. So we have a fairly low shield. The Trans-Hudson orogeny has been worn down. The Grenville orogeny has been worn down. So you have a fairly eroded, low relief continent, I would guess. You have a seaway right here because the Taconic Island Arc is on its way over. It's somewhere over here off site. So you've got a little seaway right here. So you've got some nice deep muds. Maybe even a trench coming, somewhere is going to show up in here. You got some volcanic activity up here. You got a passive margin up here and a passive margin down here. And the continent has shed lots and lots of material from the eroding Grenville orogeny. And so you got sands, you've got calcium carbonates here, deeper water sediments here, and then you have the lowlands of the shield. And the timeline chart. So we are at the Taconic Seaway, about 540, and we are about to start the Taconic orogeny. So we've gone from here, Rodinia, Grenville, rifting of Rodinia, the opening of the Iapetus. We have the Taconic Seaway as the Iapetus begins to close, and now the Taconic Seaway is going to close, and then eventually the Iapetus is going to close entirely during the Acadian orogeny. And then we have an ocean behind the Avalonia. So when Avalonia connects, we lose the Iapetus. So think of it this way. When the Taconic orogeny hits, the Green Mountains are built, we lose the Taconic Seaway. When Ganderia and Avalonia, which are behind the Taconic Arc, hit, we lose the Iapetus, and then behind that, because we have an ocean behind that, we have the Rheic, and when the Rheic closes, that will be the clue that Africa. So Taconic Mountains, this is kind of the offshore gathering of Ganderia, and numerous island arcs impacting, and this is going to be the closing of the Iapetus. This is when Avalonia and Ganderia hit, and what we have here is the Acadian orogeny, which builds most of all the mountains of New England, and then we have the accretion of Meguma, which is further offshore. We don't see it in New England, but we do see it in Nova Scotia. And then finally, a very long-lived mountain building episode, mostly for the southern Appalachians, when Africa gets here. Cambrian life. Now, as I said, The Ediacarian biota was certainly a major improvement from single-celled organisms. However, um, that was nothing compared to what happened after that. So right when this stuff shows up, the Ediacarian is gone. And no wonder, you've got predatory things that look like this. I mean, this looks like the stuff of nightmares. You've got jellyfish, they also are predators. You've got trilobites right here. These are scavenger predators, very successful. You've got probably some corals maybe here, some sponges, some sort of urchin-like things right here. These can all move around. Maybe not these, and maybe not these. But these are all mobile, and they all have like hard, a lot of these have hard exterior skeletons. These have tentacles that can sting you. These things have all sorts of things that they can protect themselves with, and they have ways of gathering food, and they don't have to sit there and wait. So it makes perfect sense that these definitely took a toll on getting, they were able to get food before the other more simple organisms would, and which means that they eventually go extinct because you're taking all the food. All right, the Appalachian orogeny. 480 to 252 million years. One of the world's greatest mountain ranges. Don't let anybody tell you different. At one point, probably as high as the Himalayas, maybe and definitely larger. They extended a much bigger area. So in a nutshell, the way we look at it, the Appalachian Mountains form where this is sort of where this blue is. This blue is going to be the extent of where they covered at one point. And when the rift, when Africa broke off, basically this is the line in the sand where it left. This right here is a piece of Patagonia. It's a piece of South America. We know that because, oh, I'm sorry. This is a piece of Africa that was left behind. But there is a piece somewhere down here. I thought of, it's right up in here. I'm sorry. This piece is Africa right here, but there's another piece somewhere in here that is actually a piece of Patagonia when Amazonia was here during the Grenville orogeny. But in any case, this is the line of the Appalachian boundary right here. This is sort of the suture. Back here is sort of the Grenville, what's left of the Grenville orogeny. Probably you would consider this, slightly deformed from the Appalachian orogeny happening. You have the coastline represents a period or a series of recesses and what's the word I'm looking for here? Promontories. And this is because, if you can see right here, this is the Iapetus suture when it opened right here. So you can see right here, these little green lines. This is where the Iapetus fractured, and it has all the same thing. So it makes sense that when the Appalachians are built, they kind of followed the same line. And when they split, they actually follow the suture that's out here that is very similar to the one you see in here. And that's kind of important. So in any case, this will be where the Appalachians are built. This is where the Grenville were built, and then everything out here was, much older than that. So a simplified view of a continent-continent collision. You have your continent cruising its way over. We'll just say that this is Laurentia. We're looking south, by the way. You have your crust right here, your ocean crust, your ocean bottom crust. And then you have an arc right here, and you have a subduction zone. So this would be the Taconic mountains, in our story. This will be the ocean, this will be the oceanic crust, and this will be the continent. And that's the subduction zone. So you go from this to this, and so all of this right here gets warped, bent, scraped, whatever, and you get this pile of stuff right here. And this is, a melange of ocean bottom sediment, sandstones, muds, whatever. Plus you have a piece of the crust down here that can sometimes become an oophilite and get pushed up over either side. These arrows, by the way, are sort of, they're identifying the same thing as over here. So this is the island arc right here. This is the ocean crust right here, the ocean floor, and that is the continent. And this is a slab detachment right here. And this was the subduction zone. But once they come together and stop, the slab is somewhere under here. It usually breaks off and then goes back into the mantle to be recycled. But this is the orogeny area. So this would be sort of the Taconic orogeny. You'd have New York here, Vermont's kind of right in here, western Vermont. You got all the slates and all the ocean sediments, and then you've got sort of the massif right here of the Green Mountains and what have you. Actually, the Green Mountains themselves are a piece of this that's been lifted back up. It's not in this diagram, and the actual arcs are represented. They're a little bit further east in Vermont, but I'm not going to go into that first. Basically, this is a very, very good diagram to explain how the Taconic mountains were built. And then eventually the continents collide, and you just get a massive mountain range. And then after a while, the mountains erode, sediments go on each side, and you get decompressional melting right here. Because now the crust has gotten lighter. It was this stage is very, very thick. But once you have erosion and the crust becomes thinner, it wants to start to separate because you get magma generation from decompressional melting, and then a new ocean is born, and we start the cycle all over again. The Taconic orogeny represented on the Wilson cycle is right here. We went from a nice passive wide ocean, the Iapetus, to now we have a subduction zone, and the ocean is closing, and we are going to end up right here with the Alleghenian orogeny. Cross section of the Taconic orogeny. This is the classic simplified view. We just kind of went over this. You got arc, subduction, ocean, sediments, and the continent, Laurentia, right here. All this stuff gets scraped. The arc continues to move to the west, and then eventually the arc just gets dragged up and then thrown onto the continent. So you all of this stuff in here. The sandstones and the corals become the marbles, which you see right here, and then you've got the sediment right here, which is all the tuffs and the schists and all that that make up the island arc. And I added a little bit. We haven't gotten to where Ganderia comes over yet, so there's sort of this. Here's Laurentia, here's the island arc right here. Here's the subduction zone, and the arc is going to slam, and then behind it we have this piece here, which is going to be Ganderia and Avalonia, but we haven't got there yet. And then there's this. This shows everything, and this is, this is a culmination of just a massive amount of work from just so many scientists to have worked on different aspects to for somebody to come up with this. But essentially, what we're looking at is we'll just say that this is a cross through. We'll say from Portland to I don't know, Montpelier, someplace like that. So the way it worked is you had the Grenville Mountains built here. This crust right here is between 1350 and 1 billion years old. You had the granite crust. You had the cover of the this is probably calcium carbonate, what have you, from the passive margin. You have a small seaway right here, and of course you have a peri-Gondwanan belt. So in other words, this really is sort of a piece of this. And what happens is, as the Iapetus is dropping and subducting somewhere east of where we are, of the present, the shore of the present shoreline of Gondwana, at this time would have been New York. Somewhere offshore, this is happening. This is where the subduction, has been starting, and you're going to have an arc out here on that. That is the Mooretown terrain. And then as that cruises by northern Amazonia and in Western Africa, it's going to pull pieces of that off, little microcontinents, and that is Ganderia. And so if you have a look at, if you were to look at a cross section of New England, more or less, I guess, at this particular time, this is what you would see. You would see, you would see that all these different terrains have come into play, and that is the craziness of how many different things have come together on the east coast of New England. And you right here at 505 million years ago, you would see all of this. And so at this point, this hasn't really I'm sorry. It looks like it, because of the blue, it's kind of misleading. It's not a seaway right here. What this is this is just representative of the materials that were constructed as sediments went into the Taconic Seaway. So what you're looking at here is Gondwana terrains, things that were pulled off of Africa and Amazonia. You have the Iapetus Ocean right here, which is now become a serpentinized mantle. You have the island arc that was created when the Iapetus began to close. You have an offshore terrain from Laurentia in the row belt that is slightly younger. Continents here, this is going to be slightly younger, so it's about 960 MA. And then you have a little belt behind that, an open area when this was pulled offshore, which is represented here. So now we go down to 480 million years ago, and what we have here is you have a further closing of the Iapetus Ocean. The Mooretown terrain is advancing. You have another subduction zone that's going under Ganderia right here. And it's actually back arcing here, and it's making a little slightly spreading center here. It's thinning the crust here. The Iapetus is now closing further. And it's actually, as it's pinching, it's starting to force the row belt, the Perigondwana terrain, up over the little back arc area that was the Taconic Seaway. And the cover, the marble or the calcium carbonate, is really beginning to take over and make very, very deep deposits on the western shore, i.e., New York, western Vermont, of reef deposits. We go down to the actual orogeny of when it occurs. You have Ganderia right here. You have the closure of the Iapetus Ocean, which is right here. This is the Ganderia terrain that was dragged over from northern Amazonia. Behind the Ganderia terrain, we have the Rheic Ocean. We have the Shelburne Falls arc right here. This is sort of it's kind of an extension of this. This actually gets thrust up over the row belt because, like I said, you have this whole thing is now pinched, and so as it pinched, the subduction pushed further the Mooretown terrain up over the row belt in a gigantic thrust, and then back here, really not much has been going on. After you had the initial thrusting of the row belt over the Taconic Seaway, and again, plenty of calcium carbonate and what have you here. We go down to 470 to 460. This is the middle Ordovician, and the Rheic Ocean is still here. We have some back arc here from a subduction zone that is going underneath Ganderia. We have the Shelburne Falls area here, arc right here that is getting stitched. It's also getting stitched here with granitic intrusions. The slab breaks off. You have more intrusions right here. You have further deformation of the row belt. The row belt now has more thrust because everything is now going this way. And you can actually see the more thrust faults. You have the seaway area has now been thrust faulted even more and is actually being thrust up over the calcium carbonate shelf of western Laurentia. And then finally, when we get down here, you have in the later Ordovician, You have Avalonia makes its arrival, which was following Ganderia. You have the closure of eventually of the Rheic Ocean. I'm sorry, of the Acadia, the Acadian Seaway. Ganderia polarity has now reversed, and Ganderia is now going underneath Ganderia, which is now part of Laurentia. You have thrust faults. Ganderia is kind of getting butchered up. It's getting thrust up over itself. You have an old subduction zone right here, getting basically it's become dead. It's slab break off. You have more intrusions going up into Ganderia. It's stitching it. You have a whole plethora of stitching going on right here in the Bronson Hill Arc, and then of course the not the Roe Arc, but the Shelburne Falls, and of course the Mooretown. So these three arcs are now all of these arcs, if you they're represented by separate episodes. They are all thrown up over each other. So that's interesting. So one of them, in a weird way, you actually have the massive here, but it actually you have areas where you have the old ocean crust actually diving under it. So because this is continent and lighter, the crust will actually start to go under it as opposed to trying to go up and over. Because if it wasn't over, you'd have an ufulite. So more stitching, more intrusions, much more thrusting back here, and then you have some shales deposited back here from the erosion of these mountains here. And that is a huge mouthful. I hope I got that, people understand that, but I mean, you could spend a whole lecture just going over this, but that's how complicated it is. In a gist, you have pieces of Gondwana, the opposite side of the ocean, running into pieces of the western Laurentia, and in between you have the ocean belt sediments, you have the subduction zones of the ocean belts, and then you have the closure of the Iapetus Ocean, the Taconic Seaway, the Rheic Ocean, and eventually the Acadian Seaway. So complicated, but there it is. And this is sort of a very complex, high-end diagram of the terrains that we see. And the gist of this is you have the Ganderia terrains here. So if you look at this here, this stuff right here, out here and right up in here is generally this stuff right here. That's what this represents right here. Right here is right here. And of course you have an arc here, you have an arc here, you have a another seaway here, because these are all slates. These are all basically sediments, ocean sediments that have been crunched. Not necessarily the crust, but you have the sediments on the crust that have been crunched. So you have Ganderia and Avalonia here. Actually, Ganderia is in here. You have Avalonia here. You have the arcs right here. You have another arc here, and then you have the Peri-Gondwana terrains right here. And all of these just got slammed in. One came in after the other. It's hard for me to read this, but yeah, if you look and you can actually see anything in blue is related, is basically means that it's originated from Gondwana. I mean, from Laurentia, and anything in green means it's generally an island arc that was formed offshore. Anything that's in gray means that it's deep sea sediments like shales and schists and stuff like that. And then anything in the pink and the sort of the I don't know, what is that, tan? That would be representative of things that came from the other side of the Iapetus Ocean, which would have been Gondwana or Amazonia. And you can kind of see, these are just kind of telling you when the hits came. And, between 480 and 440, we consider the Taconic Orogeny. And we see we have a peak here at 474 and then one at 450, 451. And again, Avalonia, well, we'll just kind of, here's the Mooretown, the Roe. Then you have the Mooretown, drive the Roe into this. Mooretown ends up having slab break off. You have intrusions going into the Mooretown terrain. You have Ganderia now coming over. You have polarity reversal. So now there's there's a subduction zone going underneath Mooretown, which is also scraped up ocean sediments right here. And then Ganderia is going to come and slam into Mooretown. And of course, the crust right here is also going to have slab break off and massive intrusions right here. And then Avalonia comes over behind Ganderia and then slants into it. And of course, you have a subduction zone here. So that's a very simplified version of it. And these colors represent the same colors that are kind of over here. Ganderia, Ganderia, Avalonia, Avalonia, Mooretown, Mooretown. Okay? Anyway. And then, of course, the dark green is probably the stitching that happened after. So, and then we confirm this even more by looking at ages. And you would expect the older to be more west, the younger to be east, and lo and behold, that is exactly what we see. These ages were taken by guys that went out, and I think they were done by zircons. I'm not 100%. You know, geochronology usually done with zirconian. You can basically take those and you can, you know, they hold a timestamp really well. You know, zircons don't really break down. They're all over the geologic record. Just a matter of getting them and finding out and doing a dating test on them, and they'll tell you not only where they came from, but how old they are. And so the 435 through 460, which is pretty much out here, is essentially telling me that's the stitching going on after the collision of the island arc, and then subduction started going under here. The greens out here, those are older, and that is one of the earlier arcs, because you have the row here, and that was the first accretion of one of the island arcs here, so they're slightly older. And then you have blues that kind of go this way. That's because there's a bend in the crust right here. There's an old transform. Remember we said that the crust kind of breaks off. You have promontories, and then you have a big, deep embayment, and then there's the Adirondack promontory like here. So the crust underneath kind of goes like this. So it would be kind of like a stepladder like this. And so this is just another promontory. So in other words, this area here kind of wrapped around and started intruding here. But there was no resistance, so it stopped here, but it was able to keep going here. If that makes any sense. And of course, there's more geochronology. You can't really see the ages here, but they're in there. And again, they're matching that everything here is much younger than everything out here. Tectonic terrains in map view. All right, so here is your Taconic mountains right here. Here is your Ganderia terrain right in here. You have the various island arcs that are here in blue that basically make up you know, numerous of the mountains in New England. You got these greens right here are Mesozoic in age. This is when you have volcanic eruptions in the Jurassic and the Cretaceous and the Triassic. You have a rifting event here when like this area right here almost separated. This is representative of flood basalts and represented the thinning of the crust and the rifting when Africa tried to pull away. And we have it here, we have it here, and we have it here. So literally this could have been the coastline, but it did not. It eventually ended up moving out here and following a very similar pattern that the Grenville did. Anything in sort of the light orange is what we would consider Grenvillian age, so that's about 1 billion years. And you have what we call inliers, meaning that the Appalachians actually pushed some of this up through the crust, or rather it folded up underneath the mountain range, and as the mountain ranges wore down, you're seeing Grenville basement rocks right here. And that's why I say you had to have the Grenville rocks here first in order to build the Appalachians, because it's the sediments from these that helped build some of these, but not all, because a lot of these were built offshore by island arcs, and then they ended up smashing in. But if they didn't have anything to smash into, you wouldn't have any mountains. So you still need so Grenville, little Grenville sneaking up through here, Grenville, and then you have, you know, the Appalachian ranges right here. Yeah, this is an interesting map. And then this is the Avalonia right here. Avalonia, I believe, is some more of it right in here. This is Meguma, and of course the Ganderia terrain right here, and then you have arcs back here. And the Taconic orogeny basically is this area right here, and that was what we just discussed and what we just went over. And this is the mountain range of the Green Mountains from 480 to 440 million years ago. And if we're going to look at more tectonic ranges, we'll go back to this right here and just look at this and then look at this. And now we see we have Laurentia. This is kind of New York, western Vermont. This is deformation of the this got deformed by the Appalachian orogeny. You have the this is the Roe belt. This is Bronson Hill Arc. This is the Connecticut Valley sequence. I don't know all the names of these off the top of my head. This is the Central Maine Trough. This is Avalonia, represented right here, the Newark Basin. That's why Rhode Island kind of has that seaway, because there's actually a dip in there from the New Brunswick rift zone. And then you have this is the Merrimack Trough. So you have the Connecticut, you have the Central Maine Trough, lots of silts, lots of ocean sediments. You have the Merrimack Trough, which is again another sequence of sediments. So sediments from here maybe came first, and then I don't know how this. I think the Avalonia terrain kind of made the Merrimack Trough. So these sediments, I think, are more. Some of them come from here, where these kind of have a tendency to come from here, but that's not entirely true. I think Avalonia actually put sediments in here as well, because I know somewhere up in here we see sedimentary sources on Mount Washington that indicate that it came from the east. But these are just the terrains of New England. So, you know, Meguma was a part of Africa. Avalonia was a part of Africa. The Ganderia terrain, which is kind of in here, was part of Amazonia. The Bronson Hill Arc and the Roe Hill Arc. These were all offshore island arcs that were formed offshore. This one here, actually, the Roe was part of was actually an arc that had pulled off of Laurentia. So more or less Laurentian terrains, and then these are opposite sides of the ocean. And the Taconic orogeny is basically this right here, and that's just what we talked about. This is just, you know, giving you an idea of kind of what it looked like. You have Laurentia here. This is sort of taken from a bit further north in Canada, but you have the basic idea. You have the subduction off to the right or to the east. You had the Iapetus Ocean. You had an arc that kind of formed here. You had a back arc area here. And of course, you had a small seaway, which is very similar to what the Taconic seaway would have been. And you had some extension faults right here. And then in the earlier Ordovician, Iapetus Ocean closes. You have a whole mishmash of stuff going on. You have this dashwood, which would be like the Taconic getting thrust up over. And then you actually have reversal of polarity. And you start going under North America as opposed to offshore, and going, so you have subductions of the west as opposed to going to the east. And this is a bedrock map of Maine, which I'm going to end this particular lecture on this. And it shows very clearly our arc terrains, our our troughs right here in the center. Avalonia, this is Avalonia right down here. You have the coastal volcanic arc. These are all volcanics. You have the Central Maine Trough and the Merrimack down in here. And you have this piece of crust up here. This has always been sort of an enigma up here. This is the chain of lakes, massive. It's much older than the surrounding crust, and we think it's related to possibly the opening of the Iapetus, or I'm not 100%. It's sort of speculative right now, but I think it's in the order of 500 or some million years old. Might even be a piece of a Perigondwana terrain that popped up through. But in any case, so yeah, you have the Longfellow Mountains right here that go into the White Mountains. This mountain range was a collection of island arcs and intrusions that were inside those island arcs that you see left over. That as the arcs have been worn down, you have the resistant centers of the arcs, which, you know, of course have very crystalline hard rock, metamorphosed rock, and that's what makes up the tallest mountains of Maine. In New Hampshire, obviously you have the batholith of Mount of Katahdin here. This is a gigantic batholith, and that's what Katahdin is. It just sits on it's a granite resistant knob that pokes through from this gigantic Devonian batholith. The Sebago Pluton down here, we do think this is Permian in age now. Ironically enough, why doesn't this create a mountain range? But for some reason it seems to fall apart a lot easier, and it's actually a lowlands. So a little weird. You have one here that's very resistant, one here that's very not. I don't know if anybody's really come up to a reason why. And you have some volcanics down here. These are intrusives of the what we call the New England hotspot, or the White Mountain magmatic series. It goes up through here. These are the metamorphic terrains of Maine. You know, when I look at this, what we're seeing here is that the highest mountains, or the deepest buried rocks that we see, were buried down in southern Maine, which means that the highest mountains were somewhere in here, or this was an area of an exceptional activity or a lot of heat and pressure. You have the Norimbuga Fault right here. See this? I mean, this is so obvious, this giant fault. And this is Avalonian terrain right here. And this came sliding down through here, or we're not sure. At one point we think that it was actually, it was dextral, and then at other points we think it was synstral, which means at one point it might have been going right to left, left to right, and then at another point, if you looked at it, it would be going left to right. It just depends on the time. Anyway, slate belt, and then volcanics in purple. These are the coastal volcanics, and a very interesting map. And I believe that this is the end of the lecture, and yes, we are going into the Ordovician period. You have Avalonia right here. You got New England and Nova Scotia ready to accrete to Laurentia, but that's for another discussion. And I hope everybody has a good night, and thank you for listening. Aloha.